Welcome to ATP Customs. Well, today I have a wonderful solution for you Mazda guys that may be struggling with a code P0113. This is an 05 Mazda 3 with the 2.3 in it. It has a MagnaFlow catback exhaust and it has a cold air intake from eBay. Not a brand name, a cold air intake from eBay. I think that thing was $80 delivered to my door. And this car started for a couple of years now. It's been stalling at intersections and having little issues. And finally the car died. And it threw a code P0113. Now what that code means is something to do with your mass airflow sensor or the wiring. Apparently if you're getting the wrong voltage to this sensor, your vehicle thinks that it's getting, it's a different temperature outside. Anywhere from minus 46 to 246 degrees Fahrenheit is what I have read online. So I tried a brand new mass airflow sensor. That did nothing. We had one wire here was questionable, so we did a temporary repair on it just to see. That did nothing. And from everything I've read, like I said, if you do not have the correct voltage going to your mass airflow sensor, you're going to get a misreading. So this thing, I knew the catalytic converter was plugged because the reason that was actually a guess, and you could get that egg smell out of the exhaust. But twice, I can't remember if it's 2 or 3 times now, I think it's 2 times, I've had to replace the valve cover gasket 2 years in a row in the last 2 years. And what does this thing have? 174,000 kilometers on it, so just over 100,000 miles. The valve cover gaskets start leaking. Not the outside one, but the internal ones around here. And what happens is the oil goes down into your spark plug holes and fills up the spark plugs, and then your car starts sputtering and running like crap. And then you get a ridiculous amount of black soot coming out of your tailpipe. That's a chrome tailpipe at one point. So the car would die at intersections, sputter, could not figure it out. Was it weather related? I was thinking something to do with the cold air intake. Could not figure out if it was in the rain, is it in the heat? Nope, it was so sporadic. And then one day the car just said, nope, I'm not interested in running. It would barely run. So that was catalytic converter time. Pulled the catalytic converter off, which I'm going to show you. I'm not going to show you, it's already done. I'll go through it though after this. Replaced the whole header catalytic converter. Did not do the second one, did the first one. Also changed the O2 sensors. That didn't work. So mass airflow sensors changed, wires repaired, header and catalytic converter were replaced. The second catalytic converter had no issues, it was empty. Chasing my tail. I have probably 4 days into this thing in the last 2 weeks. Still could not figure it out. So, pulled the throttle body off, which is not a big deal, just the 4 bolts and 1 plug-in. You got 1 hose here that goes in the side of it or something like that. Pull your cold air intake off. And oh boy, did we find something awesome. So what was happening is because the exhaust could not flow out of the header, or the catalytic converter was so plugged you couldn't even blow an air gun through it, it would not let any air through. There's a little pump here. That little ball there. See if I can push it up and down and see if you can hear it. Okay. Well, that was sending all of your hot, oily, soot-covered exhaust right back into your air intake. It was coming in on this side of the throttle body, not this side. This side was clean. This side was just blacker than that tailpipe. Like it was caked in black soot. And what it ended up doing, I'll show you something really cool here. Watch this. I'll stick the flashlight in the hole. And look at that. We got daylight coming right out of the intake right there. It burned a hole. That hot exhaust actually burned a hole right through the plastic intake. so that this thing was sucking air. See if I can get it in there and show you correctly, because it's very tough with this flashlight. You can kind of see it's starting to melt everything in there. You can just barely see it. It's very tough. But it burned right through. You can kind of see where that little tube is, and it just burns through the other side of the intake. And next thing you know, you have air coming out of your intake, and it's sucking the wrong temperature air, throwing the computer right off. So what we did was we took a piece of cardboard and just put it over that section and held it against it. Car ran fine. Oh my goodness, I'm so happy to have discovered that. Now, replacing that intake, I have never done. It looks like an absolute mess, all this crap you got to deal with. So, they make some kind of product called The Right Stuff. We're going to do a little test. Not in this video, that's what I have to do this week. So we are going to take a little sheet of, little piece of tin and this stuff called The Right Stuff, which apparently is pretty expensive, but when we're going to glue or kind of seal a little piece of tin in there and seal up that thing and solve it for now until I can figure out what I want to do about this intake. But that should do the job for now. I'm not recommending that is the right way to do this at all. I'm just saying that's what I'm doing to get this car running right now. So that is wonderful. Yay, solved. Now, catalytic converter. I had a really tough time finding videos and information on catalytic converter header replacement on a Mazda 3. I did find one video where a guy was able to pull it out and he replaced it with an aftermarket header which did not have the converter. If you want to make your life easy in doing the catalytic converter, remove all of this top cowl, the black part. You'll have to take both wipers off. I think you just pop that off. There's a little nut in each wiper. There's obviously there's a little bolt there on each side, and there's a couple under here, but it's just bolts. Remove this panel, and then this black panel, as you can actually see the bolts coming out the bottom. I think there was 7 holding it across. Sorry, my video is being interrupted by the helicopters from the forest fire. Okay, where was I? So yes, wipers come off, this panel comes off, and you want to get this whole big black panel off. That will give you so much more room, and you can actually pull the catalytic converter out all in one unit and put the new one in. You are going to have to unplug this here, which is your top O2 sensor, and then right underneath it, there's another wire here, which is your bottom one. Unplug those. There is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on your heat shield. Some of them have a second heat shield underneath. I think the newer models definitely do. This one, I don't know if somebody has ever taken it off or not, but it did not. So take the heat shield off, and then you're going to have 7 studs that the header bolts to. And these are just a 10 mil. I can't remember the studs. They were a 14 or 15 mil. Most of these bolts up here are a 10 mil. You don't need a lot of sockets to do this job. So, moving on. That's the upper part of it. Pretty easy to get to most of it. Let's get underneath. Okay, we're going under. Back here, you have to unhook those 2 little hangers. They just pop off. You can, probably the bottom one is the easier one, like there. You just pop that off that way. You will have to take this cross member off. I think they were a 15, one of these on each side, there and there. And then you got a 10 mil right back here somewhere. And then what I actually, I was struggling with getting it apart. You have 2 bolts. You got these 2 bolts here, one there and one on the other side for the collector. Those just separate the header from your exhaust system. it really didn't want to come apart. There was a lot of hammering on this thing. It was seized together. So if you do have to take that other one off to make your life easier, that's okay. That other cross member there is, I think they are 12 or 13 mil. I did end up removing that one for when I was putting it back together, but that's because one of these bolts had broken on me and I had to repair it, so I actually had to drop it down a little lower than I wanted to. So, you unhook those, and then under the catalytic converter, you want to undo those two bolts. I believe they were a 13, and the whole thing was able to come out with the O2 sensors still in. And that little nut right there is just a nut that holds the wiring away from the catalytic converter for the O2 sensor. And there you go. That's how you unbolt your catalytic converter. Now these are a little bit of a pain trying to get them past this cross member on the top side. This is a two-person job. You're going to want somebody under the car and somebody on top pulling while you're feeding it. So that is a header catalytic converter replacement, just kind of a how-to. It's not a big deal now that I've done it. And make sure. I tried it to do it without removing that, and no, it's not coming. There's no way it will come out. Impossible. Most of the websites said you had to unbolt the motor and move it ahead 3 inches. No, you don't. Don't do that. That's such a waste of time and energy. So there you go. Code P0113 is no more. We have a new header and catalytic converter, and then I get to drive this thing and make sure that it should be a massive increase in power, I imagine, because it's been building up for years. So that's very exciting. We get to drive this thing after the weekend. Now that stuff that we're going to use, that stuff called the right stuff, you have to let it sit for 24 hours so that it seals. And like I said, that is not something I recommend, but we're doing it anyway. So hope that video helps somebody out there, because there is a ton of guys having these Mazda issues. Oh yes, before I forget, P0113 apparently has to do with the wiring being faulty, and apparently that's a really common issue, is this wiring. But from what I understand, if you start the car and the engine light comes on, it's supposed to sense that, and the engine light wasn't coming on in this particular vehicle. So obviously we didn't have faulty wiring, and that would make sense. So thank you for watching, and I hope you subscribe.